Barbara Campbell, host of BBTV. I'm coming to you from Barbara Campbell NYC Design Studio. And today we have State Senator Kevin Parker in the studio with us. I'm going to talk to him about his district in Brooklyn and what he does in Albany as a lawmaker. Welcome, Senator, to our studio.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your district.
Well, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. I actually grew up in the Brookfield Projects until I was about 9 years old. And when my parents bought a house and moved to Flatbush, I lived what we call the Junction, where Flatbush and Nostrand meets. I live right in that area, down the block from Target.
Oh.
My district is 318,000 people. Represent part of Canarsie and part of Flatlands, but principally Flatbush East, Flatbush, Midwood, Dittmers Park, Windsor Terrace, and Park Slope.
Wow, great. All best of Brooklyn. I want to ask you also, the Reproductive Health Act was passed in 2019. How does it help women in New York?
Well, for a long time, we have been struggling in the New York State Senate because we were under Republican rule. So out of literally this now 17th year that I've been in the state legislature, we've only controlled the state legislature for 3 years, right? 2009, 2010, and now this year. So really protecting a woman's right to choose was really one of the things that at the top of our agenda. Really wanting to make sure that we made sure that that if things change on the federal level, that we were protecting women in New York, right? And really what this does is that it codifies Roe v. Wade, right? The Supreme Court case that essentially makes abortion legal and safe, in the United States. We wanted to make sure that was protected here in the U.S. just in case we had, in New York State, just in case we had some changes on the federal level. And so we just really think the Democratic Conference of the State Senate, really believe in a woman's right to choose and really want to make sure that women's options around contraception and family planning are as wide as possible. Okay. And so that's what this bill was about. Okay,
well, that's very important. Now, after 16 years in the Senate, what do you think are your most important accomplishment?
That's a good question. I've spent that time primarily on the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, and won my first election in 2002, 2003, took office. In 2004, David Paterson was the Democratic leader of the state Senate at the time. We started the Democratic Task Force on alternative energy, actually on sustainable energy. Okay. He appointed me as the chair of that committee. So really since then, I've been working on the issues around sustainable energy and a clean, green economy. Okay. And so there's actually two things that I think I'm kind of most proud of. The first is a bill that creates green collar jobs. Okay. And it actually takes money from what we call the RGGI Fund, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, REGGI. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and that's a multi-state compact in which we cap and trade carbon from utilities. Money goes into there. We've taken $113 million, and over 5 years, we retrofitted 1 million homes. Wow. That does three things. First, it lowers the energy bills of the particular homes that were retrofitted because they're tight, and so they're not. So in the summer, they're not letting out the cool air, and in winter, they're not letting out the hot air, right? And so it takes you less energy to heat the home or to cool the home because it's been retrofitted and it's been closed. The average home in the Northeast has about the equivalent of an open window. Wow. Right? And so retrofitting your home is a really important part in terms of energy efficiency. The second thing that it does is actually creates full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. So creating employment, and so that's really like new Green Deal, right? Like really creating jobs for people. And third is that it lowers the carbon footprint of both the home and of the state. So really proud of that legislation. I think it's gone a long way in terms of doing the things that we think should be happening around both our economy and our energy resources. I'm hoping to work with the head of NYSERDA to do another version of that bill this upcoming legislative session. And then second is something called on-bill finance. And creating a bill around on-bill finance allowed people to do the retrofit that I talked about,
right,
and actually get financing for it and for it to be part of the energy bill. So let's say you had to have $10,000 worth of work done in your house in order to retrofit it and make it, warmer, more energy efficient. You could then take that $10,000, put it on your energy bill, and you would pay it as part of your energy bill instead of having a separate bill every year. And that really pushed a lot of people to get their homes retrofitted and get solar in their homes and other kinds of sustainable energy infrastructure. Yes, it's starting to get cold today, so it's important.
This is perfect timing. I want to ask you, is there anything else you want to add in what's going on here in Brooklyn, in the district that you represent?
Well, not just in the district and not just in the state of New York, but around the country, the biggest thing that we're actually working on right now is the U.S. Census. So as you know, every 10 years, the United States government goes into the process of counting literally every single person in the United States.
Okay.
Not just residents, not just citizens, every single person, right? It's a snapshot in time. Okay. And so we're really trying to get people involved with Census 2020 to get counted. We want every single person counted. Doesn't matter of your status, your legal determination. Every single person should get counted. Today, I'm actually launching my complete count committee for the 21st senatorial district. We're going to be working with community leaders and institutions around the 21st district to make sure we count as many people as possible. We're going to be running as we get closer to April 1st, when the actual enumeration starts. We're going to be running probably a 6 or 8 week campaign. We're just going to be getting out the word. We're going to start before then, but we're really going to go intensive around that time, getting out the word to make sure that people know about the census, and that they participate in it. This year is going to be a little bit different, in part because they're doing most of it electronically, so it's going to be online. And so we're partnering with our libraries to make sure that people have access, to computers and such, so that they can make sure that they fill out their forms.
Are they going to be able to do it like from their phones, or do they have?
You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from a laptop. You can do it from an iPad. But you're going to be, doing it online is the way it's going to happen this year.
And technology is changing, so this is it creates a way of making sure people can vote, being that technology is in the hands of everybody.
Not voting. This is again the census.
The census.
Yeah, I mean, it also becomes easier, frankly, and cheaper for us to do it online because it's less paper, better for our environment, easier to count, and you can check it a lot faster because you don't have to have people inputting the data. The data is already being inputted by the folks who fill out the form.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you another question following that. The 2020 census will begin in spring. What are some of the obstacles you see in making sure we get accurate count for New York?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have what they call, and this is a technical term, believe it or not, called hard to count communities. Oh. And most Black and Latino communities are actually designated by the U.S. Census as hard to count communities because they have not necessarily gotten all the people there to fill out forms. Okay. Many people in our community are distrustful of the government, particularly, given the current administration. This information, I want to guarantee people, is not being shared with ICE or, any other kind of law enforcement agencies. This is the information. Individual information, aggregate information is released, but individual information has to, by law and under penalty, has to stay within the context of the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay. And so that's really important. But let me talk a little bit about why the census is important.
Yes.
3 things really quickly. First is that there are decisions that the government makes about resources that are decided by the census, by what populations live where, right? About where you're going to put schools or hospitals, or other kinds of facilities. Second, related to that, is that there's about $800 million worth of discretionary funding that's decided based on the census. And third, your legal representation is actually based on the census because once the census is released, every state and every municipality does what they call redistricting. And so Senate seats, state assembly seats, congressional seats, city council seats, state legislative seats, oftentimes that if they're decided proportionally are decided based on the census. And so when I tell you that 318,000 people live in my district,
right,
that's a census number that we're using
to
determine that there are 318,000 people in my district. Right?
It could be more or less depending on those who have.
Right, but I'm saying that the decision about that is based on the census. So if people are not filling out the form, then they're not being counted, and thus, you know, they're not getting quite as much representation. So literally, the district that I represent was created by the 2000 census. So in 2000 there was a census. 2001 they did redistricting, and they actually added my seat. And so this New York State Senate went from 61 members to 62 members. My seat was the 62nd seat.
Wow. Right?
And so I'm really encouraging people to be engaged in it, because we increased the kind of representation that we had. And that meant both this in the entire state, but also because I'm an African American member. I don't know if you noticed that I was African American, but as an African American member, we actually increased the number of members in our caucus because I won the election and represent that community. So that's been important.
That's important, and that's awesome, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to ask you my last question, the one I ask all my guests. What do you love about Brooklyn?
Oh, that's an easy one. The people.
Oh.
This is, you know, I travel a great deal. There is no place where you have this level of diversity and interaction by so many folks. In my community, you know, there's easily 40 or 50 different nations represented by the people who live in my community. Easily, that's just off the top of my head. You know, various Caribbean nations, people from Russia, people from Israel, you know, people from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from India, you know, all sorts of folks. And I always say that my district looks like Brooklyn, looks like New York, looks like America. Wow. And I think that's really what gives us our strength, is the diversity. And you can get any kind of food here. You know, you can, you know, anything that's happening in the world, you can experience it right here in Brooklyn. And it's really a wonderful opportunity to have that level of interaction with people. And the people are great, and you know, and the people who live in Brooklyn love Brooklyn. Wow. And so that's what I think I like about it the most.
Well, you know, I always close with that last question, but being that not every day you get a chance to talk, I don't, with a state senator, Kevin Parker, I want to ask you, Brooklyn, it's ever changing. Where do you see it going now that we're moving to 2020?
Well, it's moving in a lot of different ways, right? So obviously, you know, people have seen the effects of gentrification, the change in the housing market, this building going up every day. I tell people I'm getting lost all the time because I have to look at street signs because my spatial recognition is off because they built so many buildings. And some of that is good and some of that is bad. Right. But we're going to roll with the punches, and we're going to try to mitigate the things that we think are wrong with it, and work with the things that have been improvements in the community. And so, you know, look, I see that the diversity of the borough is getting a lot more, is increasing. A lot more shopping, a lot more restaurants, a lot more attractions. You know, getting the Barclay Center here has been, you know, fabulous, and has meant a great deal of growth to the borough and to the opportunities to just enjoy yourself in Brooklyn. And so, you know, we have to go to Manhattan less for things. Yes,
you can get everything right here in Brooklyn.
That's right. And so I think that you're going to see a lot more of that. But I think there's a lot of things that we're going to have to work on, and a lot around making sure that people who have been native to Brooklyn continue to have a place in Brooklyn, both in the context of being residents, but also within the context of business community. And so that's going to be important. And we need to make sure, as we build housing, that we give enough space for schools and places for children to play, and for people to enjoy themselves in terms of outdoor activities in their neighborhoods, not just, you know, around Brooklyn, but in their particular neighborhoods. And so, you know, we'll work on that as elected officials and as people concerned about the community. But I see us going no place but up.
Well, listen, that's beautiful. And, you know, Brooklyn is staying healthy, too. So do you see more hospitals coming into Brooklyn?
Well, I don't necessarily think that, I don't necessarily associate health with hospitals, right? But I don't necessarily think we're going to get more hospitals. Like the nature of medical care has changed. So the first thing that started in the Obama administration is that we're going quickly to a wellness model from a sickness model, right? So instead of going to see your doctor when you're sick, your doctor, hopefully his job or her job will be to keep you healthy, right? So you don't wind up in a hospital, right? Hospitals are typically like tertiary care, like it's kind of the medical service of last resort. You really want, and part of what the governor has done with his Vital Brooklyn program is put in dollars to build, I believe, 36 new health centers around Brooklyn. That's going to double the number of health centers that we currently have. And the idea is for people to have primary care.
Yes.
And so for you to go to get a checkup and be able to discover things before they become a problem, because it's easier to treat a cold than it is pneumonia. And so that's somewhat where the wellness model is based. And so I'm hoping that Brooklyn is getting healthier, and I'm hoping that the resources around healthcare including continue to be both improved but also become cheaper.
Yes, and so in the census, that's important.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you're going to get counted. So
correct. So decisions about how many health centers you build, where you're going to build the health centers at, what kind of resources they're going to have, is going to be, in some part predicated on the census. It's always going to be important that every person get counted, so that we know where people are and where they're living and the conditions that they're living in. Absolutely.
Now, State Senator Kevin Parker, tell the people the most important thing they need to do to be counted for the census.
Well, people should be looking out for the forms in the mail, and they should fill out those forms accurately and submit them. And if you're not sure whether you submit one or not, submit another one. We should make sure that people are filing for the census and that they are filling out those forms as accurately as possible.
All right, listen, thank you so much again for speaking with us, Senator Parker.
Barbara, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great having you here. Do come back and keep us updated with what's going on in Brooklyn and Albany.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Till then, everybody, you count, you matter, stay in Brooklyn, and you heard it here first on Brooklyn Beauty Television BBTV. Bye-bye.